Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
I'm just going to thank you first of all for welcoming us here to the temple. And secondly, thank you all for coming this evening to give your association on this last day of the Chaturmasya period, as well as the last day of the Kartika Vrata. A very special day of Krishna Rasa Yatra and the appearance day of Nimbarka Charya, as well as the Tosi Vivaha Yagna. Now I'm a little concerned here, Prabhupada has no garland. I don't know why I've got one. I can't work that out. Thank you. Yeah. I know it's very difficult sometimes in this Kali Yuga, but as much as possible. The congregation can really help here. It's a great opportunity to advance by providing flowers or providing garlands for the deities. Srila Prabhupada would never wear a garland if the deities didn't have a garland. So what to speak of an ordinary lowly creature as myself in front of Srila Prabhupada. So it's very kind of you to offer the garland, but I know you offered it in a sense to Prabhupada, but he's not wearing a garland, so anyway, enough said. So I'm going to read a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, text number 5. Mnaya sadoprishtoham bhavadbhilokamangalam yadkrita krishna samprashno yenatma suprasidati. This is a verse spoken by Sutta Goswami to the sages of Naimisharanya in response to their relevant questions. O sages, Sutta says, O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. This is a famous verse as the introduction now to Sutta Goswami's response to their question. First of all, he recognizes the value of the question itself. Prabhupada said, or questions, Prabhupada says, since it has been stated herein before that in the Bhagavatam the absolute truth is to be known, the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya are proper and just because they pertain to Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the absolute truth. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the Personality of Godhead says, what does he say? It doesn't say, give me a cup of water. What does he say? Yes. Tak. Matak. You probably all know the translation in German or whatever language you speak. What is it in English? I am seated in everyone's heart as Super Saul from me comes
knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness.
we can always say, well, it's not my fault. Forgetfulness comes from Krishna. It wasn't my fault I forgot, right? And then, what does he say?
By all the Vedas, I am to be known.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, I'm the compiler of Vedanta.
And?
Know of the Vedas.
Know of the Vedas. And believe it or not, that this verse is the most quoted verse of all of Srila Prabhupada, in all of Srila Prabhupada's books. 1515. Quotes that more than any other verse from any source. The whole world, thus the questions that pertain to Krishna. And there's something yes I did. The personality of Godhead says that in all the Vedas there's nothing but the urge for searching after him, Lord Krishna. We just look in the wrong place, that's all. The wrong understanding. Thus the questions that pertain to Krishna are the sum and substance of all the Vedic inquiries. The whole world is full of questions and answers. The birds, the beasts, and men are all busy in the matter of perpetual questions and answers. In the morning, the birds in the nest become busy with questions and answers. Their questions may be not very relevant. To them it is, but not to the world. Where can we get some worms? Have you heard where the good worms are? Did you hear what happened on the tree last night? And in the evening also the same birds come back and again become busy with questions and answers. The human being, unless he is fast asleep at night, is busy with questions and answers. The businessmen in the market are busy with questions and answers. And so also the lawyers in the court and the students in the schools and colleges. The legislators in the parliament are also busy with questions and answers. And the politicians and the press representatives are all busy with questions and answers. Although they go on making such questions and answers for their whole lives, they are not at all satisfied. Satisfaction of the soul can only be obtained by questions and answers on the subject of Krishna. Okay, Hare Krishna. So, thank you for giving us this opportunity to serve you. If you wish, I can't, of course, say that I can satisfy any questions. We're just, whatever we are, and we're sort of not very mature in Krishna consciousness, but we'll try to pass on whatever little we can, and hopefully there'll be some value to somebody in our sharing. Thank you. If anyone would like to ask, is it okay if we ask for questions? There is a microphone here, Damodar. Here, Prasad Prabhu has a microphone if anyone wish to ask a relevant question. I mean, depending on the level of Krishna consciousness we're on, even the Goswamis would, at least especially Sanatana Goswami, would interact with local villagers in Vrindavan, and he would inquire from them about their, how they're doing and how their, economics, their family and so on, because that was important to them. And of course, bringing Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada would do a similar approach depending on who he was with. He would oftentimes query the other person about their life. For instance, when he was with Graham Hill in 1973, this famous, probably never heard of him, but he was world famous motor racing driver at the time. He was a world champion motor racing driver in the world. And he lived near the manor. So he came over, he was invited, of course, to come over to see Prabhupada. He came over. He didn't really have an awful lot of spiritual questions, but Prabhupada asked him a lot of questions about his life and so on. And Prabhupada, the man became quite interested because Srila Prabhupada seemed to be interested in him and his life. Eventually Prabhupada brought it around to the point of fear and the point of death and so on, because as a motor racer you're faced with some precarious situations. So at that point, Prabhupada introduced, the nature of the soul and reincarnation and what have you, karma and so on. And a little bit was there, and he took prasadam and left. And about a week or two later, he actually died in an accident, but not a car accident. He had his private. There was a private airport near the manor, and he was flying his private airplane, and it crashed, and he died. Well, he got that opportunity. So, anyway, we hope that doesn't happen to you tonight. So be careful. No, that was a very special mercy bestowed upon him by Srila Prabhupada. Very special. I mean, just imagine an ordinary, famous person in one sense, but ordinary in another sense person, had no real, particularly anyway. He must have had something, otherwise he would have not been able to come, but nothing's apparent. But he got the mercy of association with a pure devotee. And that remembrance of his moments with Prabhupada would have certainly come to his consciousness at that moment to deliver him from what would have otherwise been, a karmic chain of birth and death. So any questions, please? That's the first question. Are there any questions? Here's one question here.
Hare Krishna. When we speak about death, how can we deal with the situation when the spiritual master is going to leave the body soon? I mean, he's present in his books and in his preaching, of course, but I think it will be difficult to deal with it, and maybe you can share something about this.
Is this a literal question related to your own personal situation or a general question?
It's related to personal
question.
Yes, but
it does, because the reality is that that's the way things appear to be in this world. Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only spent 48 years present before, you could say, the world. Others even less. Jesus Christ, I think, was even less. Many of these. These, of course, are not personalities of the ordinary nature by any means. Spiritual master is also not of an ordinary category by any means. The spiritual master, we had this experience with Srila Prabhupada, of course. In the 70s, some of you may have been. I don't know if there anyone here who was initiated by Srila Prabhupada. Maybe, I don't know. I can't see without my glasses anyway, but I prefer to take them off. It's a lot easier for me. But how to prepare for this? How do we see this? Because we do have this in the material sense of the world. Of course, we are all the time exposed to this effect of perhaps somebody near and dear to us, or something which has its effect upon us when somebody dies, leaves the world, they're leaving the world. It can be a very heart-breaking, heart-rendering experience. In spiritual life, it also, in relation especially to one spiritual master or someone very dear to us in our spiritual lives, we sing the song Yeya Nilo Prema Donna, and we see the mood there of Narottam Das Thakur, for instance, how he feels devastated, practically speaking, in the absence of his spiritual masters. So it's not surprising that we'll feel emotionally affected in this way. However, we remember the time when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was departing from the world. Some of you may have had, maybe some of you were his disciples, I don't know. but you may have been privy to the years, months leading up to his departure. And what a very deep experience this was of teaching us you could say, the main lesson of life, really. Everything we do, and he would talk a lot about learning or preparing to die before you die. Preparing to die before you die. That's internal. In the sense, what does that mean? The more we're on the bodily platform of life, the more we're attached to the objects of the senses, the more we're affected by our false egos, etc., of course, then we're not really preparing, we're not very prepared, put it like that, for this inevitable test or this inevitable event which will come to all of us in due course of time. Srila Prabhupada one time said, when he was asked, how should we chant japa? So this is one little thing. He said, you should chant japa as if this is your last breath. How would you chant? I mean, you probably put your mobile down. Yeah. And everything else. And probably. We should feel like that. There is spiritual masters teaching this to us. Of course, in the presence of the spiritual master, one is very enlivened and so on and so forth. We'd understand that was usually the case. When we hear that their health is deteriorating and they're leaving this world. Now, of course, I mean, I don't know if you're referring to His Holiness Kadamba Kanana Maharaj directly, but we do have contact quite often. So, and you know, he's a living example of some devotee who's teaching us this amazing lesson of fearlessness. Emotion is one thing. There's nothing wrong with that in one sense. But fear. How to be fearless at that moment. So we practice fearlessness. And this comes, it's not some kind of imposition, it's an awakening of fearlessness, of through associating with Krishna, taking shelter of the holy name, Krishna. So I would say, how do we deal with this? You deal with this by taking more shelter of what will bring pleasure to your spiritual master. Just like with Srila Prabhupada when he was performing the pastimes of leaving this world, it brought the devotees so much more closer together, so much more closer to surrender than probably any time in our life. It was a unique experience of what it means to surrender, what it means to serve the spiritual master, what it means guru-disciple relationship. It's an internal experience. It's not something which is just, something like a mundane experience based on physical or mental considerations. It's not. It brings the devotees closer together and more, and you can say, self-reflective, looking at our own hearts, seeing how we can become more pleasing. It's a very powerful thing, very powerful preaching. Because we all have to face it sooner or later. It's the lesson of life, the most important lesson of all, in one sense. How to take shelter of the lotus feet of Guru and Gauranga at the time of death. And from everything I've seen, heard and talked to Maharaj over the last month or two, we talked months ago before it was revealed about his situation. And he's been fearless all along and thankful for everything. And so much mood of compassion and love for the devotees and for his disciples, which will never be lost. We know theoretically, Prabhupada's words are there, in the presence of the spiritual master, one serves the spiritual master, maybe directly, maybe serving his vapu. But in the absence of the spiritual master, the disciple should meditate on the instructions of the spiritual master and how to implement them. So you start that now, right now, this very minute, how I can, become a little more sincere and embrace those instructions in my heart, make them my life and soul. That's what the spiritual master is giving us. He's giving us this divine rope of mercy, we could say, or this chain of mercy coming down from the lotus feet of the Lord through the parampara to give us this shelter in the form of siksha, in the form of instructions. We have memories and so on, but the siksha is the real life force, taking shelter of the siksha. This is Srila Prabhupada's, you can read, but Srila Prabhupada's incentive, his initiative in many ways was this mood of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that the instruction of my spiritual master is all that matters to me, whether I go to heaven or hell. This was the mood. In some ways, perhaps you could say, we take it for granted, or maybe a little spoiled now in the sense that we have a lot of exposure to our spiritual masters sometimes, not always, but sometimes. With Srila Prabhupada, we didn't really, we had lectures, we didn't have any social media, the likes of today. We only heard sometimes some lecture, and hardly ever saw Srila Prabhupada. We understood that our relationship with Srila Prabhupada was through service, and that's an eternal relationship. One who takes shelter of that, the spiritual master is ever present. He never dies. He lives forever in sound. We take shelter of his instructions, his books. We prepare ourselves now, not just when the event or whatever happens and then we start thinking about it. We prepare ourselves now, take shelter of that. It will be both emotions will be there. A natural feeling of great loss, lamentation, tears. That's natural. Prabhupada said the disciple does feel like that. But at the same time, it increases, it renews it. That's the word I can't think, but it increases our determination to continue to serve our spiritual master. We had in 1977 in London, from about April onwards, when it became clear, March, April, that Srila Prabhupada's health was deteriorating. We never thought he was going to leave the world, at least we didn't entertain the thought. It was just something which had happened before, and we were all kind of like unspoken maybe, but feeling in our heart that Srila Prabhupada will be coming, healthy again, so to speak. But in that period of time, what did it do? What happened? It wasn't just a prayer to the Lord, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please keep Srila Prabhupada with us like that. But no, we decided, and worldwide, it wasn't me, it was the leaders of the movement, that we would endeavor on more or less a constant book marathon. Now I know that word sometimes shudders down our spine. A marathon, oh no, no! Torture. It wasn't torture, it was ecstasy. It was complete ecstasy. Prabhupada says it's samadhi. You just wanted more and more and more. The feeling of gratefulness, the feeling of indebtedness, the feeling of good fortune. We can never repay the spiritual master, but that effort was made to intensify the book distribution. Yeah, there was competition in Europe and in America and in Australia, because there wasn't much going on in India or the Eastern Bloc in those days. It was mainly Europe, America, North America, and South America and Australia. That was about it. A tremendous spirit amongst the devotees, camaraderie, to come together, unite, to please our spiritual master, put aside all the differences which are only externals really. They're just results of our false egos, and focus on the one thing, to try to carry the instructions of Srila Prabhupada coming through our spiritual masters in a selfless and dedicated way more and more and more. We've lost the association recently of His Holiness Bhakti Churu Maharaj and many others, great souls, and sure, it's very painful. But we have to meditate how to please. The essence of devotional life is how to please one's spiritual master. So really try to think of that now. And that will carry you forward. We had the biggest month of book distribution, maybe in the history of ISKCON, the month after Srila Prabhupada left this world. We didn't sit around lamenting. We got on with what he gave us, and in an even more determined way than ever before. So hopefully you'll be, that mercy will come to all of us, and you also. But start now. Don't wait till the time and then walk around like a zombie wondering what to do. I don't feel like carrying on, or whatever sometimes we hear. No, this means now is the time to really, those who are sincere, Prabhupada writes, those who are actually sincere, they take this now as a wonderful opportunity, in one sense. Not that we ever want to see the spiritual masters, leaving, so to speak, but a great opportunity now to take real shelter of the instructions which they've given us. So prepare yourself now. It's a part of your becoming a pure devotee. Take advantage of it. Hare Krishna. I don't know if there's any help or not, but devotees are there, don't worry. You're in a family, and we're all one family, united family, even though there appears to be misunderstandings, this and that. That's just external. It's external. Take shelter of the devotees. Take shelter of the holy name. Anything else? There's a hand going up over here, I can see. From the side of my eye. Here it comes.
March, I would like to pick up on a point when Prabhupada was there.
A point when what?
Picking up on the time of 1977 at the manor where you were. I was watching your Prabhupada memories, and you were speaking about how Prabhupada came to the manor and how you were meditating on how to please him most by distributing his books, but then he indirectly gave you also another instruction about the Varnashram Dharma part, the other part of the mission. So can you maybe speak a little about that, like the emphasis Prabhupada made in the later days, and also what is our role as a city temple here and devotees from the city, in a sense, in this, and what are your realizations over the years?
His subject matter. This is interesting. We've gone through different phases in this regard, I'd say, as to how this applies, especially if you say we haven't really made, and from the external point of view, in the Western sphere, there's some examples of tremendous endeavor and progress, I would say, in this regards. In many cases, it was a time when you weren't allowed to talk about this, by the way. It was like don't ask that question. It's almost like taboo to discuss Varna Ashram and the movement. There'd been so many different approaches and maybe some endeavors, and I don't know, but it just didn't seem to be taking off. There's, again, I would say, like many things, in Harinam Sankirtan. There was a time when Harinam Sankirtan became almost a kind of a weekend entertainment or something. To some. I calculated, for instance, in 1990, I visited England. I think I was in Asia for much of the time after Prabhupada left. And I visited England, and I noticed that the amount of time an average devotee was spending on Harinam Sankirtan was 0.02%. Whereas in the 70s, when I joined, it was 20%. That's quite a difference. It's like 10,000 times less. Well, Varnashram is not some mundane imposition. The Varnashram is, the pure devotees can see it. You're asking my understanding, so I'll give it. And this is not necessarily what it is, but you asked for that. So the pure devotees can see it is already there. It takes me back to I wasn't there, but an interview or discussion rather in 68 in Montreal, I think it was 68, with Srila Prabhupada and other devotees, Prajna and a few other devotees were there. And Prabhupada, a question came from one of them, Prabhupada, what does it mean to be expert? And Prabhupada said, expert is simple. You find out what you are and you do it. If you're a dog, you bark. Not difficult. If you're a calf, you drink the mother's milk. We just had a baby calf. Within 1 hour, the baby calf is pulling like anything on its mother's udders, and the mother is just in ecstasy. Didn't have to go to school. Didn't need to get a degree in suckling mother's milk. Automatic. It's natural. And Prabhupada said, he said simple things. It's complicated, we know that, but the principle is there. That we, he said, if you know how to make flowers, make garlands. If you know how to deal with your flowers, make garlands. If you know how to drive, and if you don't. Do what you're. Ishopanishad discusses this in the second verse, or the first one, by numerical number. This whole Ishavashram society. Now, what do we do about that? How does this work? My understanding is this. When we were driving Srila Prabhupada from the airport to the manor, Prabhupada was talking about it. I was taken aback because I was in the middle of the book distribution and the back to making and everything, which we thought was like, the emphasis on books and making devotees at that time was almost 100% energy. And the cows were hardly ever hear about it. But all that Prabhupada talked about in the car was cow protection. And he was talking about it. His body was very weak, but he was asking all about cow protection. It kind of took me back, I thought, wow. I was prepared to say, if they asked the question, how many devotees are you making, how many books are you distributing, what type of books, how many devotees going on book distribution, etc., etc. I knew all the answers. But when the question came, how many cows we got, I had no idea. Who's looking after them? I didn't even know. How much milk they're giving? I had no clue. What was the plan? I didn't have one. I didn't even hear of one. I knew nothing. It was very embarrassing, to say the least, that was so strongly on Prabhupada's, in his heart. How important. Now that was a major aspect of Varnashram. It's not a whole subject, but then we knew, I wasn't in the room, but we heard from Tamal Krishna Maharaj and others that Prabhupada's, most of his talking in amongst senior devotees, that is, was discussing about Varna Ashram. He wanted to go to Gita Nagari to help show us how to establish it. Now that would be like root or let's say groundwork. My understanding is it's the pure devotee can see it. Prabhupada said in 68 also, he said, everyone's already there. The leaders are there, the teachers are there, the doctors are there, the farmers are there, the businessmen are there, the workers are there. They're all there in society. Our business is to preach and to bring them into Krishna consciousness so that they continue. We have a little example of that in Leicester. One farmer he's still living there and working with us also, has basically handed over his farm and all of his experience to the devotees. Just an ordinary karmi farmer. But he's become very attracted to the principle, not the practice, but the principle of Krishna consciousness. So that's one aspect, the preaching. The other aspect, I would say, besides the sincere endeavor of devotees to try to actually act according to their nature as much as they can, that becomes more evident when our heart becomes cleansed. So Sankirtan is inevitable. It is. You can't have one. You can't have Varnashram without strong Sankirtan. It's not going to work. It's not an alternative. It's a development from that. It's a development from the purification of the heart. It's a natural development. And it will be seen in the form of preaching that in order to bring people in general into the environment of Krishna consciousness, they may not become 16 rounders with a new name, following 4 regulated principles. That's not necessarily the case. That's a very Brahminical aspect of Varnashram. We need to get outside of that little kind of comfort zone or that protective zone and realize that Krishna consciousness is to embrace a world for the whole world to live in, a movement where everyone can be connected. Animals, birds, beasts, everything. Or to speak of those in 2-legged human form, so to speak. Everyone can participate in this movement. So we have little, I would say, I don't have much practical. I mean, I've thought about it hundreds and thousands of times in different ways, from different angles, especially in our farm communities where I've spent a fair bit of time. Anyway, I don't want to get onto the negative side of it, but I think we have a little bit of realization to come yet before it manifests in a kind of a more broader perspective. Good examples are there of certain Brahminical aspects of devotees establishing a nice Brahminical environment, but beyond and above that, a lot could be desired. But it will come. It will come by necessity, if no other reason, in due course. But to me, the main thing is the purification of the heart, being instrumental in just revealing what's already there, basically, and just connecting it to Krishna. It's very, very... For the world in general, let's see what happens, but Prabhupada made a lot of emphasis in his later days how important it was. He also said it's important for our devotees because the fact of the matter is the majority of us will not be able to live a happy Brahminical life. It's a fact. What do? We get a job in a factory or office or some call center or whatever it may be. I don't know what you do these days. Shop or something. Running around doing useless things, insurance, this thing, that thing, all, no value in reality. But even that in urban circumstances, developing, was Prabhupada in the early days had restaurants in his mind, opening up Hare Krishna outlets, distributing prasadam was one of the simpler and more obvious ones. We had Spiritual Sky, which was, in its time, was quite effective, you could say. Devotees were engaged in that. It didn't go much further than that. We were selling incense, of course, to shops and stuff. Okay, something was there. But on a greater scale, much greater scale, things could be developed in that regards. Employment, occupations. We're talking of urbanization, urban situations like Zurich. Different ways that we can offer, I mean, you can go on and on like that with different little things like that, but ways within the community. No, I never see this as the temple manager's job. This is the community's job. The temple manager's job in Varnashram is simply to maintain a spiritual environment in the temple. Temple is not a place just for living in. It's an ashram for cultivating pure devotional service. And everyone who comes, unless they're troublemakers, are welcome, and they should come for a spiritual experience, not a mundane one, not to learn what career to do and this and that. That's another arena, another form which we haven't developed very much yet. It's still very temple-based, and tendency, oftentimes we find Vaishyas managing temples. Sometimes a person's a little bit more elevated, they're Kshatriyas, sometimes even more of a Shudra mentality. Sometimes it's all about money, sometimes it's about control, sometimes it's just about work. But that's not the essential, let's say, purpose of a temple. It's to facilitate our connecting with Krishna, reminding us of our relationship with Krishna, beautiful deity worship, simple, and encouraging all the congregation or anyone who comes to make a sacrifice to Lord Vishnu. And you mentioned my memories, so I don't have many of any value, but one is the one which is probably more prominent in those discussions was the offering obeisances, for instance. Very simple thing. Srila Prabhupada said that this devotees who are prajaris or full-time supposedly devotees need to teach the guests how to render service to the deity by offering their obeisances properly in front of the deity. It's just a small example. It's not exactly Varnashram, but it's a principle of responsibility. Taking responsibility, acting according to your own situation, your own nature, and doing it for Krishna. If people come and see we're miserable, they won't be very inclined. But when one acts according to one's nature for Krishna more and more and more, generally speaking, one is quite inspired. One feels much more, let's say, peaceful and much more contented and just much more complete, usually. So that's an attractive feature. You may be pot washing, you may be toilet cleaning, you may be gardening, you may be driving, you may whatever it is, taking out the garbage, according to one's nature. Of course, for a devotee who's a little more elevated, any service you'll be blissful. But not for everybody like that. It may not be the same. But at least the temple is a temple. It's not a factory, it is not an office, it's not a bank, it is not a family planning unit, it's not a counseling office, it's not a farm, it's not a restaurant, it's a temple. And temples do have a specific purpose. As an individual has a purpose, so does the field. It's like fields, they have a purpose to grow food. They're not meant for other things particularly, in some cases, but not really. They're not meant for golf courses or things like that. They're meant for growing food. And temples are meant for the specific purpose. As we grow, we'll see that, I think, other forms and other levels of management will come. Persons who are experienced in these other areas, who are attracted by the spiritual and essential purpose of, let's say, the mission. Although they themselves may not be so elevated, they're willing to render their expertise in helping to establish aspects of Varna ashram which we may think are to be done, but we don't have the capacity to do. But they do have the capacity. So that may come in due course of time. That's one angle. Others may see it differently. That's what I see. When there's essentially Brahminical atmosphere in the temple, with devotees living who are kind of more cut out for that sort of a lifestyle, living Brahminically, it is very uplifting, very uplifting. I had this experience in our farm in Australia. I was living there for 1 year in Govardhan. And I just tried to concentrate on what I felt was what I could offer. They asked me to be the temple manager. I said no. He said this is a whole different approach, which I have a different kind of approach on that as well. But in terms of the position, I just spent my time just trying to encourage the devotees to do what they can do for the service of the deity and to come together and do united things like kirtan and service, prasadam and so on. And it was an experience, and I'm probably proud of it, but proud or not proud, it just shows an example that it brought out of devotees something that they were hiding, very much so, hiding. They didn't want to give anything to the temple. Some of them had money, they wouldn't give anything before, because they know what happened to it. The temple was managed by a man, somebody who's not necessarily Brahminical or whatever, and they don't know where the money went. They never find out. This thing, that thing, forget that. They give it for one thing, they spend it on another. All kinds of excuses with their differences. I don't like the guy or whatever it is. And I found that devotees were coming up to me and saying, Maharaj, I don't want to give a penny to the temple, but I give it to you. And substantial amounts. And if I give it to the temple, but but it's like, it's unique. it brings it out. It brings it out of people when that atmosphere is there. They want to. People want to give. They want to be, they want to be themselves. They want to, but it's hard to be. So it's a big responsibility. Varnashram is just simple as that. It's just about being who you are. It's not some complicated thing. You don't have to go to university for it. It's just about finding out your position, playing your part. I noted there when I was very interesting. I started a magazine. Those days we had no internet and all that. Started a magazine for the community. Very simple one. I don't have much expertise in these things. We started one, and helping me to do it with the kids. The boys would come down after school in the evening to staple it, to put it together, this, that, the other, whatever they could. It was so fascinating to see their different mentalities. They were like 8-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids. To see their mentality was fascinating. I will never forget that. I mean, one of them said to me, I was brahmachari or whatever in those days, said, can I manage this? Can I organize it? Another one said, how much are you going to pay me for this? Honestly. Another said, just tell me what to do. It's very different, the same work, and they had different approaches to the same thing. It's obvious what their mentality, their natures are. Clearly obvious at that stage. It's easy when they're young, more easy anyway, to ascertain. Of course, nowadays it's hard because of social media. They see rubbish from the age of 2, on the mobile phone and all this stuff. So they get all confused and mixed up. But in a natural situation, it's a lot easier to see. So I think that Prabhupada's talks in 76 and 77, he was pretty much emphasizing the importance of establishing a Brahminical head which would be able to inspire others who have a different role in life to take their part and do it, and not try to imitate being a Brahmin when you can't. Obviously, you can't even get it from Mangalati. What's the meaning of being a Brahmin? And things like that. He was making those points. There's nothing wrong. We get this idea that if that therefore you're inferior or something. It's not like that. It's not like that. It's kind of, you have to know what the height of the bar is that you can jump over. Knowing where you stand and taking your part and being honest about it. And sometimes in society it becomes negative, and criticisms and complaints and all sorts of things come in. It's related to this whole subject matter, that we're not playing our part. Because if you're playing your part, it will have a positive effect. But anyway, it's a long way to go. But purification of the heart is always at the root. And what more we can say on that is a subject matter which I haven't really done anything of any value to offer of any kind anyway, although I'm staying at New Mayapur, we're just struggling to, keep the boiler working and, fix the bricks that are falling down and the slates that are falling off the roof and everything else that's falling apart. It's hard to think about, something more than just survival at this stage. Your big blueprint, and then the government comes along and says, if you don't fix this €750,000 worth of work, we're going to close you down on October the 30th. It's pretty hard to think about other things. So anyway, the time will come. Time will come, and I think it's coming because this urgency is starting to enter back into the air. We have to be urgent. Nothing started off like a rocket. Book distribution was, my God, how are we going to do this? We can't do it. Back to program. No, this is not going to work. It's not going to work. We can't take good devotees off Sankirtan to do this program. No way. But when we did, we saw that, my God, it increased the book distribution 4-fold within a year. We made 40 full-time Sankirtan devotees in 1 year. Whereas before we only had 20. It's like, but you have to see the situation. In the city, congregation, community. I don't even like the word congregation, you know why? Nothing wrong with it. But it does have a smack of they belong to us. It's our congregation. Whose congregation? They're devotees. They're part of the community as much as anyone else is. And they should be made to feel part of the community of spreading Krishna consciousness in Zurich. What can they do? Together, get together, do something. Don't just come to the temple and sit here and cook and take prasadam, but they can do something, practically speaking, to help establish. Maybe some of them are expert at this, that, and the other. Maybe they can start off as engaging devotees and start doing things Krishna consciously. Different things like that. Making inroads into other areas, forums for bringing businessmen into a little bit appreciation for Bhagavad Gita and its teachings, which can be applied even to non-devotees. Different things, according to your capacity, can be done. It's not that everyone has to become a Brahmin. And if you're not a Brahmin, it's this, that, and the other, then, you're fallen, you're out of it. It's just another perspective. Anyway, you could go on all night. Nothing will get done. Nothing will change unless we change our own hearts. Starts within. Starts within. Play your own part. Be in the right place to play it. Now, if you're going to play football, don't go on the cricket pitch. It won't work. Right? You go on the cricket pitch with a football. It's not going to fit. You play your part in the right place. But Krishna consciousness is the essential consciousness, the thread between everything, to connect everything to Krishna. Otherwise it's a waste of time. It must be connected to Krishna. Anything else? I don't want to go any further on that, I'll get in trouble. Anything else?
Thank you, Mahan. Thank you, Mahan.
I don't know if it's on.
You have to switch it on.
Complicated technology, this one.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Maharaj. You have been mentioning several times during this lecture about the importance of purifying our hearts.
Of what?
The importance of purifying our hearts.
Purifying the hearts. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Pardon? Keep it a little further away, but it's echoing.
So my question is that how do we purify our hearts and how do we spot the subtle manifestation of our false ego?
Okay, I asked the same question about a month ago to Giriraj Maharaj. We were sitting together for about 2 hours talking. And I asked him more or less the same question, a bit more specific than yours, about, I don't want to get into the specifics of it. He gave a very good answer. His answer was 4 seconds long. And he said nothing else. I thought about it afterwards. He didn't go any further. He said, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. Finished. If you know what that means.
And what does it mean, please?
Can someone tell us? Well, you really have to know the whole verse to make sense of it, otherwise it's just a repetition of what you just said. It means cleansing the heart. More or less. But what does it mean in context? You think about it carefully, what does it mean? I mean, take it further, it's part of the whole verse, right? What is it a part of? You don't know what it's a part of, most of you do anyway. What is a part of what? Goodness me, nobody knows. You never heard of the ISKCON prayers? They're pretty important. They're pretty important. In fact, our whole movement is based on it, really, on the ISKCON prayers. And what does it mean? Read it carefully. Read that verse carefully. Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhavamahadavagni Nivarpanam Shreya Korava Chandrika Vataranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Bodhivardhanam Patibadam Punamritashvalanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. Okay, now this is the positive side, basically speaking, isn't it? To chant the holy names of the Lord. And it goes on, of course. by following the process to chanting. The process is given by the pure devotees. The purification of the heart is the grace of Krishna. It's not by the mechanics. It's by the mercy of the Lord purifying our heart. He's Bhavitram. And that mercy is by when we get the mercy, when the Lord is, let's say, pleased, and when the Lord is pleased, when we please His representative. So when we try to chant the holy name according to the direction of our spiritual master and our parampara, etc., that pleases Krishna. And then the purification. Now purification is not as straightforward as it sounds. Purification, as we read in, say for instance in Kalyana Kalpataru, the compilation of Bhaktivinoda Thakur songs, different songs, it appears sometimes to, it's like when you take a medical course sometimes, you appear to get sicker for a while sometimes. It's part of the recovery. It's sometimes, not always. And sometimes it's there, that material desires come to the surface and it doesn't look like we're getting purified. In fact, it looks like we're more full of material desires than we were before. We didn't know they were there. They would come up normally in the cycle of karma. But in a devotional life, if we're actually chanting, it speeds it up and they can come up pretty quick. And it can be a little bit unnerving sometimes, a little bit, disturbing. But if we know the process and we're in the right association, it doesn't have to be like that. In fact, there become more incentives to take shelter of the holy name, rather than reasons, this is not working. We become more determined, especially in the association of devotees. So that's another aspect, purification. So how else can we say? So chanting the holy names, following the process, trying to apply the process in chanting, in the association of devotees as much as possible, is the means, generally speaking, of evoking the mercy of Krishna who purifies our heart. What does he purify our heart of? He purifies our hearts of what? What's he purifying our heart? What of?
The 6 enemies.
The 6 enemies, my next door neighbor, my GBC, my wife, my husband, temple president, and the devotee's got a different philosophy. Who else is your enemy? Who else? He gets rid of them, right? Get rid of them. Get them out of my life. Okay, the 6 enemies. Can you be a bit more specific? I mean, well, even more than the 6 enemies.
Envy, illusion, madness, lust, anger, and greed.
Oh, very good. Goodness. Wonderful. Already job accomplished?
Not yet.
Not yet. Work in progress. Well, there's 6 enemies, which have to be. They can be engaged. Envy, Vishwanath Chakravarti says envy can't. There is another aspect of looking at that one even, but generally not. But the other ones can be engaged in Krishna's service, okay. Let's look at it another way. What does he cleanse our heart of? Those are kind of like unfortunate kind of like nature which we have. But what is it? Get down to more specifics. Anarthas, okay? What are anarthas? What's an artha? Is anartha and artha. What's artha?
Something that is valuable.
Something is necessary or valuable. So anartha is not necessary. We have so many of these, let's say, desires from the past, which come in the form of thoughts. So many thoughts come into our mind. We may still be attached to many of them, if not all of them, but at least many of them. Different attachments we have in our hearts, which keep us anchored. They keep us anchored in this world. They're dirt in the heart, various kinds of dirt. Of course, as long as the underlying mentality of envy and greed and lust is there, they will remain there. But in of themselves, they attract our attention. They attract our attention. So what are we going to do about that? Okay, the purifying process is there of chanting. It should be anyway. And whatever other services we're able to engage in may purify us in the way we've tried to describe. But what else can you say about that? That these various anarthas Do you ever watch, you ever go on social media?
Social media.
Pardon? Is that the word, social media?
Yes.
What does it mean?
TV, radio.
Pardon?
TV, radio.
TV or TV
Radio?
or radio?
TV or radio? Where are you coming from? that they disappeared in the 1950s, I think.
Facebook.
You've heard of Facebook, huh? What is it? Twitter? Twitter? Huh? Instagram? Is that something else? I don't know.
YouTube.
Huh? TikTok. TikTok, YouTube. Okay, different types of ways to keep us busy. And we fill our hearts with this stuff. Right? You don't think of it like that when it was necessary. But it's just pouring more dirt into our hearts in most cases. I mean, it can be positive also, but in many cases it's not. Unnecessary. And I'm also a victim of this. It's an unnecessary, thing in many cases. It's not going to change the world. It's certainly not going to make our heart cleansed. Having knowledge of all this stuff. And even on the WhatsApp, it's like, how are you? You show a picture of the samosa you just chewed into. Describe how many, peanuts were in the whatever. I like your earrings, A lot of bunk. Spend a lot of time with this, huh? Sometimes. I'm not saying you do, but I know a lot of people do. It just jams. You just get, what do you call it when your stomach gets stuffed up? Constipated. You just get constipated with all this stuff, You can't pass, you can't move forward. You just get stuck with all this junk in your heart. And then we talk about purifying ourselves by chanting japa, You get livened during the kirtan, and afterwards you go out and start fighting over prasadam or something. It's, two sides have to be there. I mean, if you're really talking about this, but this is not necessary for people in general. It's more of an environmental improvement, which Varnashram has, is to improve the environment so people are not so exposed to all this stuff. And they do hear hearing and chanting, because in a pure Varnashram system there will be Brahmins reciting the Vedas and chanting the names and this and that, so everyone gets that to some degree. And they're serving the Brahminical culture, so they get tremendous benefit by serving them. And they're not so much exposed to things they don't need to hear about. When you mentioned radio and TV, that was like the beginning of another era. I remember when we were kids, we never had TV, we only had radio. And then the TV came into our lives in the late 50s sometime or another. And it was a battle to keep the thing going. It wasn't like now, And they didn't really know what was going on the other side of the world, and so what difference did it make? In this thing and that thing, and so many things. It's just unbelievable. The exposure people have to anything. And Maya is so powerful. Huh? It's like, even if it's a complete rubbish, and it's rubbish, the tendency is to go there and just check it out. And it just covers your consciousness. It probably gives a simple example. It's like trying to light a fire by pouring water on it. You don't light a fire by pouring water on it, right? You could probably give a converse example, but this is a simple enough example. Like we're chanting, it's like the anchor's still in it. This is Maya's test. Maya's not to blame. She's testing us to see how sincere we are to become Krishna conscious. I really thank you for this question, because it's waking up in myself a little bit to remembrances. But it's a big subject, huh? The environment is what the temple's for, so you can come here and feel purified. You're not going to come here and talk about your babies and this and that, or about your headaches and what have you. You come here to, be purified in the atmosphere of the temple. And you can do that in your own home, to whatever degree you can, of course, also. But that's the function. There's a place for everything. But sometimes, we don't have to go everywhere. There's a place for everything. That doesn't mean we have to go everywhere. Looking for this, looking for that. New thing, something interesting, something new. Let me find out a new knowledge about, whatever. I mean, you know better than I. All the stuff that's on this social media, isn't it? You know about these things? I mean, I know something, and you probably know more. Mostly I know from internet, news, even the news, it's like, I canceled my Yahoo account. I had a Yahoo account one time. You know Yahoo? Is it Yahoo? And it's my Yahoo, is that what it's called? My Yahoo. I call it Maya Who. Maya Who. You. Maya Who. Every second another thing coming up, some news or something or another, half-naked ladies, everything, come on the screen, It's madness. What chance do you have? They can't help it. Even you go on the ordinary news, there'll be like down the sideline, there's these pictures of half-naked ladies and this thing and that thing, and maybe for the ladies it's not a problem, but it's a problem for the men. I don't know. It's just so much exposure to things. It's Maya, is really Kali or Maya, whatever, coming in there, really trying to divert your attention away from Krishna. Well, I'm trying to see this in relationship with Krishna, but you don't need to. Just chant, read the Bhagavatam. Anyway, that's another aspect. Be careful. Try not to expose yourself unnecessarily to all these. A little bit now and again won't hurt. A little bit more will be, it's okay, I got away with it yesterday. And a little bit more, and it gets more and more and more until you start thinking, I've got no interest in chanting and hearing anymore. You lose your taste. It's your choice. Everyone has their little free will there. But there's a tremendous amount. That's why we have to create an environment where there's an opportunity for environmental purification too, which you're doing here, festivals, kirtans, and so on. Nice arrangements to make us feel we belong in the association of devotees. We belong in Krishna consciousness somewhere or another. Everyone has a part to play. Everyone should be made to feel they've got a part to play. Try to encourage that. And if the head is as I say, I'm probably a very good example of the head not properly behaving, but if the head is indulging in these things, then what to speak of the body? You'd expect the feet to indulge in these things. There's nothing unusual. Even in Vedic society, Shudras would drink sometimes and do this and that. You're not expecting them to be Brahmins. But they're devotees, or they're in a society of devotion. Hare Krishna. Anything else on that? Or another question? What's the time? What time do we have to finish? Well, that's not a very good answer.
Up to you.
It's up to me, okay. And another question.
Maybe unlogical question.
Excuse me?
Maybe I have a little bit unlogical question.
Illogical?
Illogical.
Illogical question.
Illogical.
Illogical, sorry.
Alogical or illogical?
Illogical.
Alogical. Illogical, okay.
Okay, non-common question if you prefer.
Uncommon.
Use the microphone.
Non-common.
You have to switch.
Non-common. Okay, fine.
Switch
Go
on.
ahead.
Moi, je t'en faire.
Oui.
I can hear you clearly, but I don't know if everyone else can.
I just want to know how many turns you have to do for Damodar with the lights.
How many turns?
Yes, once I've heard 7 turns.
If you don't do 7 turns, we'll turn you around. There's someone here not doing 7 turns? Really? I thought this was like common knowledge. I thought, this is like the first rule of Damodar. Oh, yeah, okay. I remember one time I asked a similar question to Krishna Kshetra Maharaj when he was the deity minister, you know, about this and that. He said, don't worry, we're going to solve all these problems very soon. We're working on it. How many circles, this, that, the other, you know. You mean circles, do you?
Yes, circles, yes.
You don't mean turning around in circles.
No, I mean circles.
Some people do that. Yeah, I can understand that can be a quandary sometimes. So he said, we're going to solve this. He said, we're working on it right now. We have some of our scientific devotees making a robotic pujari who will do everything perfectly. You don't have to think. You know, you're in the arti, right? You're offering I could never relate to this. You're in the arti. 4, 2, 3, 7. Put out the light. 4, 2, 3, 7. Turn on the... You know, it's just like a blooming machine.
Sorry.
No, not, don't be sorry. It's actually a very relevant question, I'll tell you, because there's arguments about these things. You've got to do this, this, this. And I never ever saw Prabhupada get into this personally. I know in Bury Place, for instance, he established, or it was established under his guidance, the deity worship. The same thing applies to in deity worship, by the way. How many circles you offer, and which order you offer, and who do you offer. And that's another thing. I mean, which order do you offer when you do the lamp for Damodar? One will say this way, one will say that way. You start with Damodar, you know, you start with Guru and you work up and go this way, and you go in the mid. Some say middle and go down, and some say only this one, and everyone else you just flip through. And I don't know if anyone ever talks about these details. You know, you offer 3 circles. No, 7. No, you have to offer 4, 2, 3, 7. It's a lamp. You know, you go on and on, but it's really you're offering your heart. You know, that's the most important thing. When the pujari used to, in the early days, they used to dance during the arti and sing at the top of their voice as they're doing this, whatever they're doing. You know? Now the pujari stands there like, you've got to put sellotape. You don't even have to put sellotape over his mouth. It will not open if you beg him to open the mouth. It will not open. Buttoned. Only opens to King Krishna whatever it is. It's really that art. So he said, we're going to make a beautiful robot who will just, every temple will have one, and they'll do all the artis. You don't have to worry anymore. They just come on, you know, press the button, in comes the pujari, and everything's perfect. In Bury Place, Prabhupada, believe it or not, had a totally different system of offering arti than he destabilized at the manor. Totally different. So different, it's unreal. No. Number of circles, who you offered to first, it was all different. He didn't seem to make a big issue of this, you know. It really is hard. But if you want to establish a system in a temple, which you do, we have a what's it called? Badati, what's it called? A deity guidebook. The deity guidebook, you may have seen it, I don't know. There's a deity guidebook. It's quite complicated in many ways, because it's really for those who want to do the full thing, they're really into it. But we never, I mean, in the early days, we didn't do all these things. We never knew anything about mudras, mula mantras, this thing, that thing. It was just very simple, very simple. But the main thing is from the heart. But because we're not on a very elevated platform, therefore, it is a good idea to get some direction, not rules, direction, so we have something to focus on. Now, I don't know how many circles you're supposed to offer to Damodar or not. I don't know. I've never heard anyone make a public declaration of these things. And I don't really know if it really matters. I don't know if anyone here has made this inquiry on a higher level, so to speak, that, you know, and Krishna will, you know, smash you with a stone instead of the pot if you don't offer enough circles or something. I don't know. Anyone have any suggestions there? Maybe this has to be done behind, you know, without write it on a piece of paper and see what the majority say. I don't know. But, you know, what do you do? I mean, do you offer 7 circles? What do you do? Oh, you do?
I was taught to do 4, 2, 3.
That's for Arti.
7.
Yeah, that's for the Arti with the lamp.
And for Damodar, I do that.
You do the same thing. You do it for all the deities afterwards, or what? What do you do?
I do Damodar, Yashoda.
You do it first?
Yes.
You do it first. And then?
And then Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, just 7 each.
7, just 7 each? And then you do Gaurnitai 7 each? Yeah? And then you do the Guru Parampara, or what?
And that's how I do. I do Advaita Charya, then Gadadhar, Srinivas, because I want to cover all the personalities.
Wow. Phew.
The Shingadev, the Shilas.
You see, you can do that. You don't have to do that.
But
You can do that.
how many times you do, Maharaj?
Me? I don't know. I've got no idea. I don't even count. I just keep going as long as I feel. I don't count.
So, Marge, when you were taught to do Arati in the early days, there was no mention of numbers.
Yes, there was.
There was?
I can't remember. There was something. Now, I don't even know if it was a fixed number, but we would offer to Radhalandineshwara, both of them together. Their right feet first, then their right waists, right side of their waist. Where we're looking at? Yeah, right side, then their right shoulders, then their heads together, then the left sides together, down. And I can't remember if it was 1, 3, or what it was, but it may have been a certain amount, or it may have just been, just do it. I can't actually remember. I do remember the order and how it was offering them both together. Just their right side first, and you up to the top, then you go down the left side. You start at the bottom, not the top. Now we start at the top and go down. We start at the bottom, with Guru, and then Gauranga, and then Radha Krishna. Like that. And then the assembled devotees. Very different,
So you do that?
No, I follow whatever I don't offer Arti much now, but I follow the system which they've established from the deity book, generally speaking, as much as I can. I don't know all the mudras and all this and that, but I do the basic order like that. Just because these things are big things on some devotees' minds. They're like confusing, and they argue over it. They make a whole issue about these things, which we don't want that to happen. So some standards should be there, some guidance should be there, but not too complicated. It gets overwhelming sometimes. You forget to chant. It was Prabhupada made it because he wasn't one himself a very big kind of things in this regards. All the laws were simple, kept simple. But that's okay, but I don't see you have to do it that way. I don't think so that everyone does it that way either, in terms of Damodar. So you work, you do, you choose what you're going to do. So you are. I don't think there's a rule in that regards. Maybe that's the rule here, I don't know. If it is, please forgive me for breaking the rules. Offering lamp to Damodar, do it properly. Okay. I'm sorry, Masuda, that's not a very definitive answer.
That's okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, you do what you feel. There's no, as far as I know, there's nothing specifically written in this regard, as far as I know. If you want to offer 7 circles or this one, that one, fine. Whatever brings in your heart this, feeling of offering and surrender. Okay, I was getting him 9 already. What's the time? 9 o'clock?
9.
Yeah, we've got to knock off. We're leaving. I know the weather tomorrow is supposed to be awful. The only day it's going to be snowing and raining is tomorrow, and we've chosen to travel across the mountains. So we need a prayer, please. It's not the Himalayas. Deva Prayag, where's he gone? There he is. I was talking to a Christian yesterday and said, I have a phobia, I don't know why, probably from a previous life. When I was in the Himalayas especially, not only there, but other places, when the road goes round like this, Have you ever been on, you must have, you're living in Switzerland. If you go on many of these little mountain roads, it goes around, it goes like there, and it comes all the way back and around. Is it like this, isn't it, sometimes? And then, you know, and sometimes, I'm sure here it's not like that, but in Nepal, these roads have nothing on the side. It's just like a couple of feet between the road and boom, 2,000 meter drop or something, you know? Crazy. It's like, whoa. I hope it's not like that here, is it? Okay. It's one relief. Because I've never been on this road across to Italy before from this side. So I'll have to see. It's not too bad?
No.
The new one, the highway, is okay?
It's okay.
It's okay.
Good.
Okay. I might be able to sleep then tonight. Maybe. Let's see. Even when it snows, it's okay?
Sometimes, if you go over the pass, they will close it sometimes.
The pass, is that the tunnel or is that different?
The tunnel is open, but there is also a way over to go over the mountain.
Oh, no, well, we're going through the tunnel, I think.
I'm not even sure.
It's a pleasant way to
Through
go
the
up
tunnel,
pass.
it's not
Yeah, but it
much.
takes too long, doesn't it?
No, because the tunnel sometimes you can get stuck in the traffic.
Is it?
Yeah. So
Yeah, I don't know. You have to explain that. I looked at non-toll roads and it was like 9.5 hours to get to Turin. And then the toll road was 4 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. You have to pay in the tunnel?
No,
Not if you've got that ticket thing.
you have to take it.
Yeah, we got that ticket. It's free,
It's
huh? It's pretty good. Inclusive. And we'll see then what the situation is when we get there. I mean, if it's pouring with rain or snow, there's not much point going up the other way. And then we'll
I
see.
wouldn't go.
No.
You can also stay here.
Huh? Stay here? Yeah. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.
His Holiness Chanananda Goswami Maharaj ki